Hello, hello, everybody. Good to see you. Good to see you. If you're new around here, I do something called Ask Juliana. And essentially what that is inviting you all, and I'll put a little detail in the comments or description below, but I invite you all to email me questions that I will then address in the upcoming week. So the questions that I was seeing a lot last week in some form or another sounded like this. Do I have to keep investing in programs or coaching or myself? I shouldn't have to spend X amount of dollars in order to get X results, right? Do I have to or I shouldn't have to? Was the general vibe of the question that I was getting. So I am going to break that down today. Now, whether you are an entrepreneur or not, this message is still relevant. All right. So hear me out. So first question is, I would invite you to really just get curious about why you are asking yourself these questions in the first place, right? Like, why don't you want to invest in yourself, right? Just get curious about that. There's no judgment, no good, bad, right or wrong, but why don't you want to invest in yourself, right? Why don't you want to be the best at your craft or whatever it is that you are pursuing? Why don't you want to be the best at that, right? Why do you think that you shouldn't have to invest in preparing for the future and in securing that future, right? Why is it not normal, or why is it not something that you think is mandatory to invest in what it is that you need or what your business needs, right? Why isn't that a given for you, right? Just explore different questions around that. Sometimes when we just ask a statement that's like, I shouldn't have to, period, or do I have to? Sometimes those questions aren't deep enough to really get the answers that are powerful and effective, especially when it comes to helping you move forward. So essentially, what I am using wisdom to pick up on here is that the reason somebody would be asking this question is because you want to save money. You literally don't want to spend any money. That's, in the simplest form, that's what it is, right? But that also then implies that you're trying to squeeze an entire gallon of orange juice out of one orange. And it's scarcity mentality. It's scarcity thinking, okay? So the real hard truth, and something that, especially if you are somebody, and I'm sensitive to this, if you are somebody that's made a lot of investments, right? Whether that's been education and you've had student loan debt, and then you've gotten certifications, and then you've maybe invested a lot in businesses and perhaps didn't get the return on investment that you initially anticipated, there could be some hope that's been deferred. There can be some expectation hangover outcomes, right? There could be some things that are disappointing, but are you going to let that stop you? And the real hard truth that would have been helpful to hear at the start or at the onset of that journey so that you would have the right perspective is that there will be many investments that you make, particularly if you are an entrepreneur, over the course of your journey. Many. There's not just one. There's not one program that you do that's going to be one size fits all. There's not going to be one thing that you learn that's going to change your entire business. It can change your entire perspective about your business and how you run your business, but there's still going to be new knowledge, new wisdom, new understanding, new that you step into. We've seen that a lot, even with just technology, or even in the past year, and having to, the famous word, pivot so many times, right? And to pivot, you need new information, you need new creativity, you need new skills, you need to be able to adapt, right? So the real hard truth is there's going to be multiple investments. And the short answer to this is you don't have to. But I would wonder, or I would be curious about why you would not want to. You don't have to. You don't have to grow. You don't have to evolve. You don't have to give yourself what you need and take care of yourself. You don't have to invest in your business. You don't have to do any of it. You get to decide that, right? But get curious about that. Why would you not want to? Think about that, okay? So here are a couple of ways that you can digest this new information that I'm presenting today, and some ways that you can challenge your own thinking around limiting questions like that, so that you can go a little bit deeper and actually get to some productive action, okay? So the first thing that I would recommend is think long-term growth, long-term health. What is required for the long game? Not just for like a microwave result, right? Not just heating something up, not just getting something real fast, like overnight, but think about the long term and what you are investing in. For example, you are your greatest investment. Are you not going to invest in yourself anymore? Are you not going to take care of yourself? Are you not going to prepare yourself for these different levels that you're going to in your life? So picture being a parent, right? You don't know how to parent until you are one, right? You just don't know. There's just some things that you don't know until you're in it. And then when you're in it, you need to get new knowledge and new skills, right? And so investing in programs or coaching or whatever it is that you need is a given in a lot of ways, right? Like that's just something that you do. That's part of the flow, right? When you don't have the information, you can go out and be resourceful and get the information, and you can ask for help, right? And your growth and your health depends on it. Okay. So for example, let's say that somebody also experiences some trauma, right? A recovery program might be something that is the next step that they're led to go to. Now they don't have to, right? And it's going to require a lot of discomfort and a lot of work. But on the other side of that is more healing and more growth, right? And when you're healed people heal people. When you're free people free people. So if you stay stuck, what does that mean for your family and whoever you're connected to, right? Or maybe therapy is something to invest in so that you can actually get some help with your mind and help navigating your emotions and help understanding what is going on in your soul, right? Your mind, your will, your emotions. When you go through something, sometimes you don't really carry the weight of that until after it's over, right? And there's still something to process now that you can breathe a little. But if you don't do that processing, that's still in you and it will still affect everything that you do in the world. So it would make sense to invest in that, right? And to prevent yourself from that growth, you're only limiting yourself and getting in your own way, and also limiting those that are then connected to you. Okay. So think long-term growth. What will you need to feed yourself with, or what will you need to feed your business, right? And basically whatever you're feeding it now, right, will determine what you then go on to create. Okay. So whatever you are feeding your business now, whatever you are feeding yourself now, that will now determine what you go on to create and how you move forward and how you show up. Okay. So think about that. So think long-term. What will it take to be the best at what it is that you do? What will it take to really help you unleash this potential that's on the inside of you? What will it take to create and partner with God to really manifest on earth what he's put inside of you? What is that going to take? Right? And think about that. Meditate on that. Think about that. So that's number one. Number two is, how will you learn to manage yourself and your mind better if that's not something that you intentionally create accountability and get some good mirrors in your life and some help in your life around? How will you get better at that? Like, can you be accountable to your best by yourself? For me personally, the answer is no. Right? Like I can motivate myself to do things, and I can show up and I can be disciplined and I can do some self-check, but we all have blind spots, right? And to go to these new levels, right? Every next level is going to require a different version of you. So to go to these next levels, are you going to bring your same thinking to that next level? Are you going to bring your same kind of like internal drama to the next level? Is scarcity thinking going to work for you there? Think about these things, because that is something to consider when you're, again, picturing long-term. All right. And if you have no accountability, are you really growing? How will you know? How will you know? And do you actually grow and evolve on your own? Consider these things, right? Okay, next one. Will you be able to give more if you stay at your current level? Will you be able to give more if you stay at your current level? So a way of looking at this too, in my very so way back, right? I thought that you just coach people one-on-one and that was the best business model, right? Because I didn't know any better. I didn't recognize what it would require if you have 20 plus clients that you're working with, or what that would take out of me, right? Or if that was the best model to actually scale. It is not, right? So that was something that unless I decided to grow, unless I decided to evolve, there's no way that I'd be able to give more if I stayed under that current business model. So I had to be willing to learn new skills. I had to be willing to create different back-end systems and structures within my business in order to scale, in order to grow, in order to expand. My current level was not going to be enough for the vision that I was given. Okay, so that's just an example, but think about that. Will you be able to give more if you stay at your current level? Another one, right? Working in a corporate arena, right? Giving tons of hours, like 40 plus hours, being exhausted, right? I could have let that be an excuse in my own life, right? I ain't got time. I can't invest in more things. I can't do these more things. But I leveled up my investing in that season. And some of that was investing in fitness programs to help myself be able to change up my routine in a way that made sense so I could work my windows. Some of that was getting new training so that I could start having tools that I could take into that environment that was weighing heavy on me at the time. So in a time where it would have been easy not to invest and to create every excuse in the world for myself, I invested more and I challenged myself to show up differently. Okay. That seems very counterintuitive, but if you have a long game vision, you can see how that's productive. And that ended up creating more energy for me. The more value that I invested into myself, the more I was able to show up differently and hold the right boundaries and take care of myself and say no and say yes to the right things, right? So think about that. All right, the next one. Do you really love growing and learning? It's a good question, right? So for example, if you are an entrepreneur, just part of entrepreneurship in general is growing and learning, right? Like you don't have a boss that you're reporting to. You don't have anybody telling you what to do or how to do it or really keeping you accountable, right? There's some things to be accountable to, like for example, with a coach, I am professionally certified and a master coach now. So there's different credentials that I'm accountable to in how I show up. And there's more tools and learning that I constantly pursue in order to grow and evolve, right? But think about that for you. Do you really love doing that? Because if you're an entrepreneur and you don't love learning and growing, it might be something to reconsider because you don't have to. Like you can actually go and work for somebody else. But even just being an entrepreneur, there's so much that you don't know, and that doesn't have to be overwhelming. But if you really love learning and growing, you'll be excited about that. So for example, coaching is one part of what I do, but then there's also sales. And if I don't know how to sell, that's very much going to limit me, right? Or there's marketing, or there's design and creativity, right? There's production, there's many different elements. There's finance, right? There's many different elements of running an effective business. And you might need more knowledge and wisdom in a particular area. So to say that I invested in this program and I didn't get the result that I wanted, well, what did you get from it? There's probably something that you still learned. And now what do you still need? Go get it, right? So do you really love learning and growing? And what I like to think with this one is that it's worth the reminder that investing in yourself is really the best feeling ever. And when you invest in yourself, it also increases your belief in yourself. It increases your self-worth and it increases your commitment to the dreams and the desires and the things God that put in your heart, right? So that's worth it to me, right? Like if you just check yourself out, right? If you invest, right? And if you take a risk and if you go all in on yourself, there's a momentum or a force that kicks in that's like, I'm going to get a return on my investment. I'm going to go after what I came here to get and I'm going to get it. and I'm going to keep it moving and I'm going to grow because that's what I do, right? So think about that. Do you love learning and growing? Because if the answer is no, then maybe you're not actually in the right position or in the right place or in the area that you're called to, okay? And lastly, number 5, and then I'm going to just briefly touch on the different types of investors because I feel like this might be helpful. My words, helpful for you. Okay, so it can actually feel fun and exciting to spend, but this is a jump if you're coming from scarcity or if you're not used to doing that at all, or if you're coming from like a people pleasing or codependent background. Sometimes it can feel really awkward to actually invest in yourself, but it really can be fun and exciting, right? And when you really know trying to think of the best way to say this, if you think of the impact that your investments will have, you'll want to invest, right? Like if you really recognize what these new skills will give you, what growing in this area will give you, what being able to operate in this new knowledge will allow you to do, then you'll want to invest. And that'll be fun and that'll be exciting for you. And you'll go after all of that knowledge and all of that information and you'll apply it, right? You're not going to just like half show up. Okay. So if you don't get results, you can't help others get results. It is what it is, right? Like if you don't get results, you can't get them. You can't help other people get them. If you're not getting breakthrough in your own life, how are you going to release breakthrough in the lives of other people? Something to noodle on, right? Okay, so here are the different types of investors, just so you can see or evaluate how you're investing and if you want to make some adjustments, okay? So the first one is the investor, and this person is all about strategic investments, meaning they are going to invest in what they need. They're going to show up and go after all that they need to get out of that, and they're going to get what they came for, and then they're going to invest again because that's just like the normal flow, right? They keep the flow going. I'm going to get new knowledge. I'm going to grow. I'm going to integrate it, and I'm going to release it, and I'm going to get more new knowledge. I'm just going to keep growing, expanding, and giving as I go, right? The next one is an over investor. Okay, so an over investor, an example of this one might even be like the folks that were asking these questions in the first place. But an over investor is somebody that throws a lot of money at the problems that they have, but then doesn't show up and doesn't hold themselves responsible for getting the results that they actually want. Okay, so they're not, let's say they invest in like 3 programs at a time, but they're not really showing up for any one of them, or they're expecting the program or the coach to do more work than they're willing to do, right? So that's somebody that overinvests. They've got so much on their plate and they just don't show up really for any of it. Okay, and then they don't get the return on their investment. And then there's the under investor, and this is the type of person that invests as little as possible. Like, I don't want to invest unless I have to. Like, an example of this is like if you get a nail in your tire and the tire is like gone, right? If the nail is in the right spot and they can't replace the tire, but you need a new tire, like it's inevitable. So you're going to invest in that tire, but you wouldn't want to invest in getting new tires in the first place, right? Or maybe you're required to get some kind of training, but essentially you're not going to invest until you're in a bind or until you absolutely have to, whatever that scenario looks like, right? So you invest as little as possible, you look for shortcuts, and then the whole time let's say you invest in a program, just keeping with that example, the whole time you're invested in that program, you're thinking about the cost of the investment. So you've got so much mind drama going on that you're actually not showing up to get on the investment. With me? So, in summary, sometimes it's helpful just to think about how you're showing up, or to even just have a language or a model to it. So hopefully that's helpful for somebody. But I think what is helpful to know, and what I would have loved early in the journey, is that there are going to be multiple investments over the course of you investing in yourself, over your life, and over the business journey that you have, right? That's just a natural part of growing and evolving. There's investments in order to grow and evolve, right? And they require your engagement to get the full return. So what I would say is start small, but recognize that you're going to keep investing, and that's part of the journey. Okay. So starting small could be a certain amount of money, or like investing in your first coach and then being led to the next step and to the next step. But know that there's always going to be the next step, and you will be led to the teachers and to the tools and to the things that you need, right? And just pay attention to that. So you don't need to do all the things, but there are going to be things that are required for you to show up and be your best. There are going to be things that if you didn't learn them, that you'll probably have to learn in order to be effective in delivering what you're here to deliver, right? So just wanted to hold that up. Do I have to? In short, no, you don't have to. You don't have to, right? But I would get curious, and I gave you a few things to get curious about. Get curious about why you wouldn't want to invest in yourself or invest in your business. Why would this thought of I shouldn't have to? Well, who said? Who said you shouldn't have to? And why are you the exception that you shouldn't have to, right? And if you want to continue to advance and evolve, a growth mindset is very much a part of that, right? And if you want to hit a certain level in business, right, there's different mindsets and beliefs and inner work that is involved in order to steward that well, right? So just some thoughts for you, Noodle. If this resonated with you, I would love to hear from you. You can also copy the link and share with a friend. Let me know if you have any questions that you want me to riff on and give you some context around. And if you haven't subscribed, be sure to do that, because there's a few videos that come out every week and you'll be the first to know. All right, guys. You can connect with me if you're new. You can connect with me over at julianapage.com. There's courses and programs and coaching and all the things there. There are books that can support you on your journey, and just all the social medias, all the links to those are there as well. You can also listen to the Spirit-Filled Real Talk podcast with Juliana wherever you get your podcasts. All right, guys, until next time, stay blessed.